Greetings, friend. I will show you how to spot and solve Sudoku unique rectangles. Click on the link below to solve the puzzles that I feature if I have links available. And with that, it's solving time. Okay, this is our first example. This is the mole, harder version of the mole by Sudoku Explorer. I got a link to the original video below. I solved this before. I want to look and have you focus on these four squares, right? So you see these four squares, what you probably notice is they have the same two by value cells in each square, 4 and 8, 4, 8, 4, 8, 4, 8. One of those contains an extra digit, a 5. Okay, this is a unique rectangle type 1. What you need for a unique rectangle to occur is you need to have 4 cells. They need to be, the cells need to be in the same 2 rows, columns, and blocks. Okay, at least one of the cells has to be by value. And what I mean by that is one cell has to be just a by value cell. This one has more than that, so that's okay. But each cell will have to contain, the same 2 by value cells that we have here. Okay, those are our minimum requirements. And what we're trying to look at here is we can solve these 4 cells. We can solve this cell here for a 5. And here's why. Each Sudoku puzzle normally has one unique solution. All the ones I put on my channel have one unique solution, right? And what that means is if you go through here and solve this puzzle, the grid will only work out one way. What a unique rectangle looks at is it says anytime I'll say this a little bit better. It's basically saying that we're going to use a strategy that prevents you from putting in something in a cell that would make you have 2 solutions. And it's called a deadly pattern. A better explanation of the deadly pattern is it's a configuration of candidates that leads to several solutions for a particular puzzle. Okay? And so what this means is, let's say here that you didn't have a 5 right there. Let's say you marked that as a 4. You put this as a 4. Well, this makes this an 8. Since this is an 8, that's a 4, and that's an 8, right? So let me show you what I'm talking about, picture-wise. If this is not a 5, let's say, okay, maybe that's a 4. You put a 4 right here, then this would have to be an 8, that would have to be a 4, and that would have to be an 8. And obviously that's not the right solution to the puzzle. And so you've got 4 here and here, and 8 here and here. It's kind of like a X-wing, right? Well, step it back, if you put an 8 here, 4 there, 8 there, 4 there, well, now you would have 2 solutions to the finished grid because those 4s and 8s would just swap places. You can't have that. The puzzle is not, it only has one unique solution. Now, I will tell you that one of the rules of Sudoku puzzle doesn't require it to have a unique solution. You can make a Sudoku, and by just the normal rules, it could have more than one solution. In my experience, I don't like solving those puzzles. Most of the setters who make the handmade, they only do one unique solution, and then there's some other strategies that don't apply. So most people who make the Sudoku puzzles, most of the puzzles you will find in books will also have that stipulation, one unique solution. Anytime you know the puzzle is a unique solution, you can always check for this deadly pattern or avoid the deadly pattern and use unique rectangle logic. So here, so the type 1 is when 3 of the cells are the same by value cell and one of the cells contains extra, right? And so in this case, it contains a 5. But if it contained more than one candidate, if it contained a 6, 7, 8, what you can do is you can eliminate both of the by value cells from that one candidate. And so since there's only one remaining, a 5, this cell can be solved for 5 because you're preventing that deadly pattern. Okay, I swapped over here because I wanted to show you Sudoku Wiki has a little bit more explanation about unique rectangles. I'll put a link below to this website. And it's still, this is the kind of pattern you're looking for because you have 2, same by value cells, right? 2 rows, 2 columns, and then 2 blocks. And so then it shows here in B, you have 2 columns, you have 2 rows, but these cells that are in 4 different blocks. And so this doesn't work. You can't have it like B. It's got to be like it is in here in A. And then, of course, you're going to have some additional candidates in here that you can use to help solve. And so this is this deadly pattern. This is a viable one when you cannot use unique rectangle logic for something when you see right here with B. Hopefully that makes sense to you. Now, let's move on to our next example. So now we're going to move on to unique rectangles type 2. So I'm going to show you where the unique rectangle is in the type 2. This is from an analysis video I did. I'll put a link to the original video below and to the puzzle. You can help solve the puzzle. This was Techniques for Hard Sudoku, Mark versus Classic Sudoku, 5 May 2020, where he got this puzzle from a viewer named Joe. And so here's the cells we care about right here, right? So you notice 2 rows, 2 columns, 2 blocks. Same 2 by-value cells, candidates can be in all 4 cells, the 7 and 9. So you know this is a possibility for a unique rectangle. Now, the type 2 is a little bit different than the type 1, and you'll probably notice a difference. At least 2 of these cells contain an extra candidate, the same extra candidate. And since it contains the same extra candidate, for a type 2, the extra candidate is going to be in the same, it's not going to be diagonal. So it will be in the same row, column, or block. So this is in the same row and block, right? And what you can do is now you can look at and eliminate that extra candidate from any cell that sees both of these. So let's look right here, and you'll notice that this contains a 4. You can eliminate that 4, and here's why. Same thing, you're worried about the deadly pattern, right? So if this wasn't a 4, and if that wasn't a 4, if we try to eliminate those, you'd have 7, 9, 7, 9, 7, 9. And you can probably see pretty quick that you could put a 7 here, a 9 there, and I'll just show it. 9, 7. Okay, 7s and 9s, and then go back and then go 9, 7, 7, 9. Okay, you'll notice the right solution is always going to have, like, you know, one candidate that's off, right? From me showing you these wrong solutions. Okay, so we know we want to avoid that deadly pattern. So one of these has got to be a 4. So if one of those has to be a 4, you can eliminate any cell that sees both of them. You can eliminate that candidate. So we can eliminate a 4 from right here, and you can solve this for a 9. And then you can solve that for a 7. That's a 9. That's your 4, and that's your 7. Interesting, in the video discussion, Mark talks about uniqueness and how some people don't like using uniqueness, and and I'll talk a little bit later, but my point here is if the puzzle has a unique solution, it's a valid solution to use uniqueness. The other thing I want to say is you'll probably notice this type of solve is not much different, you know, as far as complexity goes. These are kind of easy to spot, and they're not much harder to solve than, say, like an X-wing or a skyscraper, or maybe even like an X. It's probably even a little easier to see than an XY wing. So that's why you know, this is kind of like if you're looking to go just above where you're looking at pairs and triples and like what's the next strategy I need to learn, it's this one. And I'll tell you, I made this video because these pop up quite a bit, and I get asked about it quite a bit. I go on Reddit and I try to help people solve their puzzles, and you wouldn't believe how many times I get asked about unique rectangles. And it's kind of hard to explain and walk through the whole thing in a text thread. So I figured I'd make this video, and then I can refer them to the video, just like I'm doing with you right now. And before we move on to our next puzzle, I wanted to share one thing with you. Friends, I made a welcome video for my channel and for my Buy Me a Coffee page. I would love it if you could support the channel by buying me a coffee. You make a donation, coffee's $5. I will give you a personalized thank you, link to an exclusive video that you won't see on my channel, and I'll give you a shout out in one of my videos. Hopefully that's worth it. But I want to encourage you to support me. I really appreciate it. Now let's move on to our next example. Okay, our third example, we're going to talk about a unique rectangle type 3. All right, this one's not that common to see. It's actually a little bit harder, probably the hardest one to spot as far as unique rectangles go. But when you do see one of these, it leads to quite a bit of solving. This puzzle is Ghost in the Cell by PatheticPancreas. I'll just highlight the unique rectangle cells of interest first. I'll put a link to the puzzle below. Great puzzle, and also to the video. It's one of my first Sudoku handmade classics I made. So I apologize, my video quality isn't that great at the time, but it's a great puzzle. I think you would enjoy solving it. PatheticPancreas has some quite innovative puzzles. He also did Sailfish, which I did, and I introduced the world to my way of solving alternate inference chains. So unique rectangle type 3. Here's the best way to explain these. You have two non-diagonal cells, so two of these cells contain additional candidates, right? We still have the 2 rows, 2 columns, and the 2 blocks. And all of them contain the same 2 by cells, 3 and 5. But you have additional candidates here. So you have an 8 here and you have a 2 here. You could have more candidates in there. The 2 cells act as one virtual cell. So they contain only the extra candidates. And because one of the extra candidates must be true, then we can use that as like a virtual cell to kind of help solve the rest of the house that it's in. And normally you're talking like the column or the row. So what am I talking about here? Well, we know that if we did 5 and 3 here, you just have that deadly pattern. We don't want that. So one of these cells either is going to be an 8 or it's going to be a 2. So what you do is you say, okay, treat that, one of these is a 3 or 5, and then one of these is a 2 and 8. Treat that 2, 8 as a virtual cell. And so we can link it up with another 2, 8 right here. And now you have basically a naked pair, right? You got a 2, 8 in one of these, 2 or an 8. You got a 2 or an 8 in one of these, and then you got a 3 or 5 in the third one, right? And so what you do with this type 3 is you go, okay, 2, 8, 2, 8. Now I can eliminate 2 and an 8 from the rest of the cells in that house. See how that works? And so you can solve that for a 2, you can solve that for a 3. Pretty cool, huh? And I'll tell you, well, with this puzzle, another reason why people don't use it too much in the Sudoku Handmade Classics is it's usually not the intended solve path. PatheticPancreas came back and said, hey, that's not really how I intended you to solve that. I had a different method. So realize if you find and use one of these, you may not be going down the intended solve path, but it's still a viable option. I mean, solving right here. Another thing and reason why people tend to not use it is they'll say, oh, well, you're adding that additional assumption or constraint. But hey, you just check it out. Make sure it's a unique solution puzzle. All right, let us move on to our next example. Okay, example 4, unique rectangle type 4. In case you're wondering, we're going over 7 different types. I first learned about these with Sudoku Swami. He has a video about unique rectangles. I'll put a link to that here. And he does the 1 through 7, type 1 through 7. And I thank you, Swami. I wish you'd come back and make some more videos. I learned so much from you and your channel. He hasn't made any new videos in over a year. Super awesome mentor. And you're like, well, why are you making this now? Timberlake, if you're just copying. No, I'm adding additional content. I'm adding additional examples. And I'm explaining some of the things that you may not have gleaned from his particular video, which is a great video. And he has great examples as well. All right, so let's look at type 4. Type 4, this puzzle is called Solving Daily Diabolical number 2. And I looked at it and I found 3 different types of unique rectangles in it, types 1, 4, and 7. Put a link below to the original video. I'm sorry, the puzzle link is no longer valid. It's a website that does daily diabolicals, and you pretty much can only print out for that day. You're not going to be able to go back and go for an archive. So the type 4, you'll see 2 pure cells. So, we have the 2 rows, columns, and blocks. So 2 of them are just going to be by values cells, and those 2 are non-diagonal, right? They're going to be across from each other. And then you have 2 other cells with extra candidates. So you see how we have the 2, 5 there, 2, 5 there, 2 extra cells. One of these candidates is only going to appear in these 4 cells within those 2 blocks. So what does that mean? I mean, so like if you look at the 5s, you see how there's extra 5s in the row and the column and the block. But with the 2, there's not. See, there's no extra 2s. You got to make sure that there's only one of those that's restricted, right? And creates an X-wing pattern. So one of them's like that. So that's the case. If one of the UR candidates does not occur in any other cell, in the house that contains both UR cells, then the other candidate can be eliminated from both of the unique rectangle cells containing the additional candidates. So since there's additional 5s here, you can eliminate the 5s from both of these cells. And the reason being is if you put a 5 right here, let's do that. If you put a 5 right there, you force this to be a 2, force that to be a 5, you force this to be a 2. And then you could go back and the only other way to solve it would be 2 there, 5 there, 2 there, 5 there. Again, that's the deadly pattern. So you cannot solve either one of those for a 5 or you'll create the deadly pattern, right? That's the 5 there that second time. First time the 5 was there. So you can safely eliminate those 5s. The 5s are going to be somewhere else in this row, somewhere else in this block, somewhere else in the columns. And it's because of that restrictions on those X-wing candidates, those 2s, is what's creating that deadly pattern. So that's a unique rectangle type 4. So let's move on to our next puzzle. Okay, for our next example, we're looking at a unique rectangle 5. All right, I did not have any examples where I had solved a puzzle, unique rectangle 5. They are not very common. And so I had to generate a puzzle to show and highlight this particular technique. So it's very similar to unique rectangle type 2. You remember the type 2 is when you had, an extra candidate in non-diagonal cells. So like if you had 2 7s there, this would be a type 2. These would be a 3 8 3 8, and you can eliminate the 7s from any spot that these 2 7s see. From any cell that these 2 7s see. So you could eliminate, if it was a 2, you could eliminate a 7 there, 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 there. Got it? So with a type 5, you either have it in 3 cells like we have right here, or you have it's in 2 diagonal cells. So if the 7 was just in those 2 spots, that would also be a type 5. If it's in 3, it's a type, in 3 cells it's a type 5. But if it was just these 2, that's a type 2, right? All right, so what you can do elimination-wise is you can eliminate this 7 from any cell that sees all 3 of these. And so that would be this cell right here. The reason being is a 7 has to be one of these candidates to prevent the deadly pattern. And hopefully you've got the idea of the deadly pattern here. And again, apologize not having a link to this particular puzzle. I had to make it up in Hodoku. Great for practicing. You can put in unique rectangles, click the one you want, and it will be good to go. Believe it or not, you can actually solve these and find these unique rectangles without marks. Harold Nolte, who solved all his puzzles without marks, he often will point out deadly patterns to the viewer of his videos. In fact, I'll put a link right now to his collaboration video on my channel where he solved the mole and he pointed out unique rectangle like in this area of his particular puzzle. And it's pretty cool how it works out. And then you can start seeing it yourself and realize you don't necessarily have to show all the candidates to solve those. It just helps. Let's move on to our next example. Okay, for example 6, let me do some highlighting for you. I found this in one of my very first videos I did on my channel. And so it's called it's called How to Solve Sudoku 4 Times Faster, Daily Diabolical number 7. And this was my speed solving days, and so I would just put on some music and I didn't say any words, and I would just put the techniques to the side. So you want to watch the video, I got the link below. It's a pretty quick one, and I hope you appreciate the music that I picked out for that. I was experimenting with some different video elements at the time, and I enjoyed solving these puzzles. But there's another website that will crank out Diabolical. So I can't give you the link to the puzzle. Same reason, it's a perishable site, and the puzzles change every day. Type 6, let's talk about that, right? You probably know something a little unique here going on with the unique rectangles, get it? And this is the case where you got the two candidates, ones and twos, right? Ones and twos are in all 4 by 5 cells. And this is a case where you have the by value cells are diagonal from each other, and one of these candidates, either 1 or 2, is limited in those houses to those 4 cells. So you notice the 2s are limited to these 4 cells, similar to what we had previously with those with the type 4. Okay, so limited cells. What's nice about this is you can do 2 solves right away. Because the 2s are limited here, they actually have to be the solution to these 2 cells. So you see this pattern, you can solve that for 2 and solve that for 2. And you're like, oh, why is that, Timberlake? Because if you try to solve this for a 1, you're going to displace, right? You got a 2 here, 2 there, and a 1 there. Because you put a 1 there, then you have to make the deadly pattern pop up. Because there's only no other place for 2 to go here or here. And then you go, oh, crud, I just created a deadly pattern. Can't do it. But by solving it for a 2, there's more than one option in these other cells. There's more than one option there. So anytime you see this, you can immediately solve those 2 cells. 6s don't pop up very often. When they do, it's kind of like a nice treat. And you can solve right away. All right, let us move on to our next example. For our last example, this is Foraj Paroj by Bondye. And we're going to look at a unique rectangle type 7. So the type 7 and the type 1 appear far more often than the other types. In fact, unique rectangles are very common. Swami even said 70 to 80% of expert puzzles will have some kind of unique rectangle that you can solve. That's why I like using the strategy. But 7s will pop up quite a bit. Now, how useful they are, I'm not really sure. Because normally when I make a solve, rarely does it lead to like cracking the puzzle or anything along those lines. But I still want to show this to you. So here it is. And there's a couple of restrictions there, but once you get good at finding these, those kind of pop at you. So you still have the same 2 by value cells, 2 4s, right? One of those candidates, the 2s, don't appear anywhere else in those houses, right? The 4s do, but the 1s don't. So just like the type 4 and the type 6. Only one cell is a by value cell. So you have one by value cell right there. What you can do is you can eliminate this candidate, in this case a 4, from the cell that is diagonal from the by value cell. You can eliminate a 4 from right there. And hopefully you can see why you can do that, right? Because if this is a 4, you force these to be 2s because 2s can't appear anywhere else in this row or in this column. Force those to be 2s, and that's a 4, and now you created the deadly pattern. We can't have that. So you can just go ahead right here, eliminate that as a 4. This is going to be something else. Something else to keep in mind, this situation is also called a hidden rectangle. So if you hear the term hidden rectangle, type 7, good to go. And again, the types, it's just a way to categorize these. No one needs to hold you to the, so it has to be a type. Because I've heard the type 2s get moved into 2s and 2As and 2Bs. The 7s are called just hidden rectangles. They're not called type 7s. Don't get worried about the nomenclature. Just understand, these are all different ones that can help you solve the puzzle using that uniqueness. Try to get rid of that and try to avoid the deadly pattern. Check out these other videos to see some more cool puzzles, solving strategies. I want to thank all the setters that let me feature your puzzles on my channel. You guys are awesome. If you want further support Smart Hobbies, buy me a coffee. Click on the link in the description below. I'd really appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching.